There are some places in this world where time doesn't move forward. It loops, waits, hunts. And sometimes a train arrives, not to take you somewhere, but to take you. This is the story of one such train, a journey that began in 1883 and still hasn't ended. Welcome to the 3 a.m. train that wasn't scheduled.
The fog curled like fingers around the edges of the old platform. A cold wind dragged along the gravel, whistling between the iron rails like a forgotten hymn. The gas lanterns flickered, struggling against the chill of an English winter night. Edward Harper stood alone in the signal cabin, peering through the frost-glazed glass. It was his first night shift as station master, and already the silence had begun to crawl under his skin. He checked his log again. Last departure, 11:30 p.m. Next train, 5:15 a.m. So why then had he heard a whistle? A faint, distant whistle had echoed from the trees nearly 15 minutes ago. Too far to be a real train, too faint for a prank, too hollow to be imagined. He shook his head and stood up. The previous station master, Copley, had left in a rush just before Edward arrived. Odd behavior, no formal handover, no warm welcome, just a single line scratched into the duty log. If you hear the 3 a.m. whistle, don't open the door. He had laughed at that earlier. Now, he wasn't so sure. The platform lights flickered. One dimmed, another burst, and then, just before the hour turned, it came. A distant rumble, a cold gust rolled in, sharp as a blade, and then the whistle, long, hollow, mechanical, and very, very old. Edward's breath caught in his throat. He opened the signal room door slowly and stepped out onto the deserted platform. The fog parted like a curtain, and through it rolled in a steam locomotive, silent, ghost-like, its wheels screeching faintly. No smoke, no firemen, no sound of metal grinding. Just an old engine wrapped in stillness, gliding through time itself. It stopped with a gentle hiss. The sign above the carriage door read, Darlington, arrival 3 a.m. There was no destination. Edward approached. No train was scheduled. There was no record, no passengers waiting. The door creaked open, and from within, a figure stepped out. He wore a long black coat, shoes thick with decades of soot, a conductor's cap tilted forward, hiding his eyes. In one gloved hand, he held a leather satchel, aged and torn. The initials JWG burned into the side. Edward's voice trembled. "Sir, there's no train due now. Are you from the Central Line?" No answer. The man stared at him, then said slowly, "I've returned, as promised." Edward took a shaky step back. "Returned from where?" he asked. "There are no records of—" "I departed from here December 13th. 13th, 1883, the man interrupted. I'm simply finishing the journey. Then, without another word, he vanished into the fog. The train door slammed shut, the engine hissed, and in total silence, it vanished. Not rolled away, not chugged off, it simply faded, like a breath exhaled into winter. The next morning, Edward left the station early. He needed answers. The village sat just beyond the hills. A handful of stone houses, a tea shop, a church that hadn't rung its bell in years. Inside the tea house, the fire crackled low. The owner, Mrs. Whitby, was pouring a cup when Edward walked in. She looked up at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're the new station master," she said without asking. Edward nodded. "Was there a man named Jonathan Graves?" he asked. "Station master here in the 1880s. Her hands paused. The room went quiet. She set the teapot down slowly. "He was," she whispered. "Until the 13th. Edward frowned. "The 13th of December," she nodded once, then leaned in. "He claimed he heard voices," she said softly. "Started saying there was a train that came without schedule. Every year, on the same night, same hour." Edward leaned closer. "And what happened to him?" She hesitated. "No one knows. But the next morning, all they found was his coat, folded neatly, and a leather satchel with ash inside." She glanced at the door. "We don't go near the station after midnight," she said. "Especially not on the 13th. As Edward stood to leave, a boy at the far end of the shop whispered something to his grandmother. She hushed him quickly, but Edward heard it. "Is that the new one? He won't last either." That night, back at the station, Edward couldn't sleep. The fog had returned, thicker than the night before. It pressed against the windows like something alive. He lit a candle and walked down into the records room, a narrow hallway leading to a locked door beneath the signal cabin. The air was colder down there, older. He found the logbooks, thick, heavy, and dust-covered. He flipped to volume 12, Departures, 1883. And there it was. Jonathan William Graves, departure, December 13th, 3 a.m. Train ID C749. Return N.A. Beside the entry, written in a different hand, were 6 trembling words. Should he return, the station must choose again. A chill ran down Edward's spine. He stepped back, his candle flickering wildly. Something creaked behind him. He turned sharply, but the hallway was empty. He rushed upstairs. At 12:52 a.m., he stood on the platform again. He didn't want to be there, but something had changed. Something had locked into place. The fog rolled in sooner this time, and he noticed something he hadn't before. New tracks, old, rusted, covered in moss, leading off into the woods, far beyond the station's borders. Tracks that shouldn't exist. He followed them. The gravel gave way to wet grass, then mud, then stone, and there, at the end of the path, stood a switch lever. Its handle was cracked, worn. At its base, the same code from the ledger, C749. Edward knelt beside it. Before he could touch it, it moved on its own, snapped upward with a metallic clank. A gust of cold air rushed through the trees. Then, a whistle. The whistle grew louder, not sharp, not urgent, just long, slow, and old. The mist parted, just as it had before, and through the trees, the train appeared. The same black engine, the same glow from the lanterns, only this time it hadn't come to the platform. It had come for him. Edward stood frozen as the train slowed to a stop on those forgotten rails. Its wheels didn't churn, its engine didn't hiss. It simply arrived. The door opened, and inside he saw the glow again, a flickering golden light, too soft for gas, too dim for fire. He hesitated. Then he stepped inside. The door sealed behind him. He was alone. The train began to move, not with a jolt, not with a grind, but with a strange, steady slide. It felt as though time itself had shifted beneath his feet. He moved down the aisle. Each bench held a figure, not passengers, not quite. Some were solid, some flickered, some seemed frozen mid-breath. One clutched a torn suitcase, another held a broken stopwatch, and a few turned to look at him. Their eyes were hollow, mouths open, as if still screaming silently. A voice came from behind. "You followed the tracks." Edward turned. There stood the man again, Jonathan Graves. He looked older now, paler, less human. "You stepped through the lever," Graves said. "That means you're ready." Edward's voice cracked. "Ready for what?" Graves looked down at his gloves. "To understand." The windows around them changed. No longer trees, no longer hills. Now the view outside showed flashes, like memories. A man in 1847 screaming as a train vanished into mist. A conductor holding a lantern, weeping by an empty station. A station fire in 1869, burning down with no one inside, and no one found afterward. Then Edward saw him. Copley, the previous station master, staring directly at Edward through the glass, eyes wide, mouth open, frozen. "These are the ones before you," Graves said. Edward swallowed hard. "The ones who vanished?" Graves nodded. "The ones who opened the door." Edward backed away. "I don't want this. I didn't choose this." Graves stared at him. "You didn't have to. The train chooses. And now, it's your shift."
The train slowed again. But when Edward looked outside, there was no station, only darkness. An endless plain of tracks stretching into blackness in all directions. Some trains sat still. Others moved with no sound. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. And from each one, figures stepped off. Shadows, passengers, station masters, all walking, all fading. Edward stepped out of the train, heart pounding. Graves followed. "This," he said, "is the terminal line, where time holds the ones who fell between." "Fell between what?" Edward asked. Graves answered softly. "Between life and after. Between memory and disappearance. Between the moment you hear the whistle and the moment you're never seen again. Edward stood among hundreds of rails, endless train lines vanishing into fog, engines made of iron, wood, and some of bone. Above, the sky was black, no stars, no moon, only the sound, the hum of the line itself. Graves stood beside him, calm, still, like he had stood here for centuries. Edward turned to him. "What do you mean, it's my shift?" Graves didn't answer. He only pointed to a figure standing at the far end of the tracks. It was a man, young, nervous, wearing Edward's uniform, carrying Edward's bag, watching the trains, watching them. Edward blinked. "That's not me." Graves looked at him. It was. Suddenly, the train began to move again, not forward, not back, but sideways, through memory. Edward sat in the single passenger seat. The others were gone. He passed moments, scenes, a child boarding alone in 1856, a couple holding hands who faded mid-journey, an entire trainload of miners gone in a blink. Then the train stopped, silently, as always. Edward stepped off into a world he recognized. Darlington Station, December 15th, 1887. The logs were on the desk, the fire burning low, and outside the platform stood empty. He was back, but not quite. He walked to the office, looked at the nameplate. Edward Graves, Station Master, effective December 13th, 1883. The air felt wrong, the walls older, the lights dimmer. He walked to the mirror on the office wall, looked into it, and saw a stranger. Not Edward Harper, not the man who took the job last week, but someone else, worn, faded, like the others on the train. The whistle blew behind him. 2 weeks later, a new man arrived at Darlington Station. His name was Peter Hargrove, assigned to replace the missing master. He was young, curious, unaware. He opened the office door, expecting dust. Instead, he found a fire still burning, a teacup still warm, and a ledger waiting open on the desk. He smiled. "Well, at least it's cozy in here." He flipped through the ledger, then paused. On the final page was a line written in black ink. "If you hear the 3 a.m. whistle, don't open the door." He blinked, laughed nervously. Probably just a joke. Then he looked up, and there, in the corner of the room, sat a man in a long black coat, gloves, hat tilted forward, watching, not speaking, just waiting. Steam hissed outside the window. The whistle blew again, and the lights flickered. Some trains run on coal, some on electricity, but a few run on time itself, on echoes, on memory, and on the souls of those who open the wrong door at exactly 3 a.m.